back at it again for another episode of the Capes and Tights podcast. I'm your host, Justin Soderberg. Today, we see the return of Tony Fleecs, comic book creator, writer, artist extraordinaire. He actually joined us almost a year to the date to talk Stray Dogs, his book over at Image, which ended up with Stray Dogs, a 5-issue miniseries, and then Stray Dogs Dog Days. But he's here today to talk to us about his new comic book with Tim Seeley called Local Man, also at Image Comics. So we chatted Local Man, variant covers, comic book industry, all kinds of stuff right here on the Capes and Tights podcast. But until you listen, please follow us on Instagram and Facebook and on Twitter, as well as find us on Apple and Spotify and all your major podcasting platforms. 5-star reviews are welcome, please, and thank you. As well as follow Tony on all your social media at Tony Fleecs. But this is Tony Fleecs, one of the co-creators of Local Man over at Image Comics, as well as the co-creator of Stray Dogs, also at Image Comics. Enjoy, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast, Tony. How are you, sir?
Oh, man, I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Actually, the last time I saw you, we were wearing masks. So you were at the Bangor Comic and Toy Con at the Bangor Mall.
Yeah.
And we were wearing a mask around there. Yeah, that was a weird time.
I was shocked that Comic-Con happened inside a mall. When I got there, I was like, wow, that's crazy. We're just in the shut down mall. And they were like, shut down? And then just like the stores open. And then I was just sitting across from Claire's all weekend, just watching people get their ears pierced and stuff.
You didn't get your ears pierced? What the heck?
I thought, I was like, if it gets slow enough, I'm going to go over there and get my ears pierced. But luckily, we had...
Internally, you had like a goal. If it's like, I sell this much stuff from my booth, I will actually go get my ears pierced at Claire's and put it on the internet. No, it's funny because that was the last one at that spot. They actually moved that back to the big arena in October. They did a big arena, and they added a second one in April. They're doing April and October, and the April one's in Portland, Maine. So it's in a bigger city, bigger area. So
yeah, I like that comic shop in Portland. What's it called?
You got me on the spot now.
It's like downstairs.
Yes. I'm not gonna remember that, and I'm not.
We'll figure it out.
Yeah, at some point. But yeah, well, welcome back. Last time we talked Stray Dogs because that had been popular, but still popular. Yeah, people forgot about it, right? Right, Tony? People don't remember Stray Dogs anymore. But now you have a new book out with Tim Seeley, the wonderful, great Tim Seeley, called Local Man, over at Image Comics. And you are issue 2 just dropped. Actually, we're recording this on a Thursday, and it just came out March 29th. So it just came out. Issue 2 dropped, and I was able to read it last. Yes, that's actually pretty good. It's like because we changed the scheduling on this, I was like, I actually got to read issue 2.
Oh, nice.
Before it came out, but or before we talked. And I want to say, I'm not going to spoil anything, but in the credits page, there's a Paul Bunyan, and I was happy about that because that's in Bangor, Maine. There's a big statue of Paul Bunyan. So
yeah, that's a thing that shows up in small towns all over the place.
Yeah,
for whatever reason, there's Paul Bunyans, and then there's Mr. Bendo's, and those are two different but very similar things. You know, Mr. Bendo, like he holds a muffler.
And it's funny because everybody claims credit for like the origin of the character too. Like Paul Bunyan was from Maine, and like all that stuff. But it's kind of funny how that works. But yeah, you and Tim making this book. So Local Man. Let me read this solicitation really quickly for anybody who hasn't. It's once the star recruit of a media sensation super team, 3rd gen, Jack. Is it Xavier? Xavier. Had it all. But when controversy sends Cross Jack crawling back to his mom and dad's basement in the Midwest, Jack struggles to fit into a world he left far behind, and then the bodies start piling up. So that was the solicitation for issue 1. Actually, it said like all-star team, Tony and Tim together, but I cut that out.
I mean, feel free to call us all-stars. That's fine.
And then,
like so Pippen type.
First issue came out February 22nd, and then second issue I just mentioned came out on March 29th. Both first and second issues are in second printing, whereas the first issue second printing comes out April 5th, and then the 26th is when the third issue comes out, and the second printing of the second issue. So it's just a lot right there. Is it ongoing? Are you guys going to work on this for as long as Image and you guys want to, or is this?
Yeah, we're gonna do it for as long as it sells. For like as long as we're not losing money on it, we'll make this book. That's the plan. Because it's a comic book that's about the things that Tim and I like really love in comic books, and so it's just sort of like, I mean, comics is never easy to make, but it's the easiest thing to make because it's just like, oh, we're doing this fun thing, like, I mean, not that it's like like the book is sort of sad and like and about like feeling like an outsider and feeling alone and stuff, but the place that it comes from is like this sort of exuberant 90s place, and the book is only really half sad. If you flip it over, there's like a little treat for finishing your for finishing your meal.
I like how you said like you and Tim liked this, and that's why you're writing it. I feel like that's why Chip Zdarsky did Public Domain. It was like I'm just like, it's just in my life. I can just make this book now and not have to worry about it. Same category there a little bit. But how did this come about? Like, obviously, you guys know you guys have a passion for this, but like, how did you and Tim connect on this and create Local Man?
Yeah, we met through our buddy Chris Moreno, who I used to work in a studio with. And Tim and I would just hang out at conventions, like when we'd be at the same convention as each other, we'd get meals or whatever. And we both loved like 1990s comics the same way, where some people like them ironically and some people like them like wholeheartedly, where they're just like, that's the best comics ever were, like and then some people like them where like Tim and I like them, where we like recognize them for what they are, and we love the energy of them, and we love the like, we just are fascinated by like how, like the time period, how they were made, like everything about 90s comics are fascinating to us because we're that age. We're the age where like that was the comics we read when we were teenagers. And it's that thing where they talk about like people's favorite bands or their favorite SNL cast or whatever is from when they're like 13 years old. So it's definitely right in the pocket for us. And so we had done this convention together in Long Beach where we saw Norm Ratman, the inker, had brought this page of Brigade #1 with him just to show us. Like, he wasn't selling it. I was like, please sell it to me. But it was the first Image comic that wasn't by the Image founders. It was Marat Michaels drew it. It was his first comic, and it was Norm Ratman's first comic inking. And so it's just like this time when all these young guys who were just like, maybe like 8 years older than me or something, like within reach as a kid, you're like, people make comics and they're like almost, they're the age of people who don't think I'm like a child, or what, whatever. Like, and so he had this page, and the page was all him and Marat, except every head had been drawn by Rob Liefeld. Like, he went in and drew all the heads in that issue just because he was like, we want this to look cool, and you guys are still young, it's sort of like, he was like, a lot of those, Jim Lee and him, Silvestri, were sort of building studios and sort of like training up a generation of young artists at that time. And so like, it was really inspiring to see like that. It's almost like you could see into the studio, right? Like, you could see like him going like, all right, I'm going to draw all these heads and put these in there. So I feel like that was sort of the spark of this thing. And then we got to talking about like, during the pandemic, early, like mid-pandemic, Tim hit me up and was like, what if we did something that was like a 90s Image comic meets a 90s Vertigo comic, where it's like all the bombast and the action and all that stuff, and then somehow we do it where it's also like a sort of like personal thing that's maybe it's a crime thing, and we just sort of like started kicking ideas and characters back and forth, and we talked about like what we like about both of those things. And so real early on, the idea developed that like, well, let's do it as something that's set in current day, and then it'll harken back to the stuff that happened in the 90s. And then the way we'll do that is we'll do it like a flip book, like Youngblood #1 was, and like Brigade was, and like all these Extreme Studios books. They would always like introduce new characters or put like 2 books in the same book, and we thought like, what if we did that, but we actually make the 2 stories, inform one another and tie into each other, and sort of like build a mystery where you can see threads of it going back to the 90s stuff. So yeah, that's a long answer, but that's basically how it came about.
I love the flip book part of it too, because technically now like all your issues get 2 covers on one issue. If that technically, if you think about it, because like your back cover is a cover as well. So like I was confusing. I was at my LCS when he was like stocking the shelves with it too, and I was like, wait, that's the same issue. It's just a different.
Yeah.
It's the back. He's like, oh, he's flipping it around. He's like, okay, now I got to figure it out. But it's a
Yeah.
bonus in that sense. You also get a bonus story, like you're saying, in a sense as well. But I mean, you and Tim are both comic creators or writers and illustrators. How did the decision on what would be illustrated by who and who would write what and all that stuff? How did that come about? Like, how did you figure that out?
Well, we write the whole thing. It was just basically was like figuring out what our collaboration was. Every collaboration is sort of different based on, like people's skill sets and temperaments and stuff. But we write the whole thing together. But usually, because I have more pages to draw, I'll be drawing, and Tim will do like we'll talk over like plot, and we'll have like a phone call, or we'll do like a paragraph, and we'll talk over plot, and then Tim will do a first draft, and then I'll do a second draft, and then we'll sort of come to a resolved, like here's what the actual final thing is. And then you finish it out again. When you do letters, you can make changes and stuff. But then Tim just like naturally draws in this sort of like 90s-ish art style. Like he drew Wildcats. He drew like his early stuff was coming out like at the tail end of that stuff. And so he jokes and says like this is the only time that his art like doesn't look dated now. It's just like this is the perfect project for this, which I disagree with. I always say like if I could draw like anything, I would draw like that, So but then I had been messing with this style on like illustration projects and storyboards and stuff, where I had been doing like a more photo ref style. So I was like, well, I can do that, and we'll tell the modern day stuff with that, and then you do the flashback stuff, just drawn like you. So that's sort of how it worked out. And then like the covers we collaborate on. All the A covers is both of us. So yeah, it's very collaborative.
It's nice to have that too. And was it who was it? Is it Brad Simpson does the colors on your section, or is it and Felipe does the other one? How does that work?
Yeah, Felipe Sobriero does the colors on the flashback stuff, and Brad Simpson, who colored Stray Dogs and Time Shopper and like all of my stuff, he's doing my stuff and Local Man.
It's Local Man. It's not Local Dog. You couldn't do
There's a dog in there. There's gonna be a lot of dog in this book. We're not stupid, we're good.
I was like, that's an awesome variant cover. Could just call Local Dog and just have like a variant cover be Stray Dogs esque, which is kind of funny. I mean, I have something I want to talk about that later on about Stray Dogs, but like that I always talk to people about, and talk to like people at the comic book shop and things like that. Like it's honestly hard to create a superhero story outside the big two right now, in my opinion. Like people just go to Capes and Tights, like pun intended, to in the big two. And so you have to make it different. I mean, there's certain people, obviously Kirkman was very, very successful, Invincible, and there's others out there obviously too, but the twist you do on this, making it more modern with the flashback part of it, and then also the business side of a superhero part of it as well, is a kind of a cool twist that it's not just a superhero story, it's a lifestyle story, it's a personal story that involves superheroes. That to me is the way that this book could be successful over other, if you just went and just made a cross-check book, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that was sort of what because we think that same thing too. Like there have been very few superhero independent comics that have been successful, and so it's like when we're doing this, we're like, this is a real long shot that this will even work, but we sort of looked at the ones that have done it successfully, and the trick is, you focus on the character. You don't focus on like this one's like Superman and this one's like Batman and this is your Wolverine. It's about like we're making a story about this guy far away from the superhero world in the middle of the Midwest and flyover country. And then the superhero stuff is sort of like what pops up and causes more issues for him, or like we can do surprises with it and stuff like that, mysteries. But sort of just focusing on the character of it, and this guy in this small town with these like normal people. Like the reviews for the second issue were like very positive, but they were also like, this is a superhero comic where no superheroics happen at all, and like luckily none of them were bitching about it, because we're like we're gonna do stuff, but like there are fights in this book, but we also wanted to just feel like this guy is so far away from that, and so far removed from his superhero life. And so we tried to do, when we made up third gen, and Crossjack and like the characters, the superhero characters, we tried to just do stuff that captured the energy of those Image comics, and not so much like, this one's like Shaft and this one's like Bad Rock, and like this one's Voodoo, like it's just sort of like we knew in all those teams there was like big guy, knife guy, psychic knife girl, gun guy, like, so we just went through and sort of figured out what all those things were for us.
And I do love the fact that like the women have barely any clothes on, which is what they did back in the 90s. Sure. Or like, there's no way these people could actually fight crime in that outfit, but you know what? We're going to do it anyway.
And we in issue 3 that like all will be explained. My like comic writers used to say that all the time. Brian Michael Bendis used to say that all the time. Issue 3, we actually address like how can they possibly dress like that? Like, what's the story? So we're excited for that to come out, just because part of you wants your comic to be noticed, but you don't want to be noticed for the wrong things. So like very early on, someone was like, "Oh, of course they're dressed like this," and we're just like, "Hold on, like we're getting there."
It's like, but I always say that like story. I feel like when you really review a comic book, or like take a whole comic book, and you got to take the story arcs into effect. So like it's like reviewing a TV show before the entire TV show is over, and you're reviewing episode by episode is a little bit difficult. Like, you have to kind of get the first 5 issues to kind of understand it. So if you learn something in issue 3, it makes sense because you are telling a 20 to 30 page story that is multiple 20, 30 page stories. So you have to kind of leave something for the future. And so it does make sense. Yeah. But I know like people are like, don't like to wait. They don't like to wait for the actual.
Well, that's part of what the job is, right? Like you want to make something that as a whole story is satisfying, but also something that just like as a chapter or as a single issue is satisfying. Like that's something we think about, and hope. So far it seems to be working. People are digging it so far. So it's just a matter of like stuff with new superheroes or any new comic is just like, it's just like you hope to build it and you hope to have word of mouth be good, and so, and retailers have been behind us, so that's good. It's just it's all just comics is so weird right now. Like we're doing pretty good. But it's always just like who knows what's going to happen? Disney fires like Perlmutter, and does that mean Marvel Comics, and does that ruin the whole industry? It's just like, who knows what's going on in comics?
I forgot you guys were actually on the cover of Previews. This was cover of Previews World. Yeah,
that was
December
cool.
22's Previews World. Kind of cool. I love the fact that people call, like I said, it's if you want to boil it down to a simplistic thing, it is a superhero comic book, but it's a comic book about superheroes or a hero. But how many superhero comic books does anybody out there ever remember that the like first 10 pages are just this guy arguing with his parents? And that like asking questions, like my dad would be the same simple answers back, would be like, "Hey, have you guys eaten?" He goes, "Of course we've eaten. It's 8:30 at night." It's like that kind of stuff you wouldn't get in an X-Men comic book or early 90s superhero comic book. The arguments with the parents, or the dad and mom just being like, "Why can't you just go back to the group?"
Yeah. Well, Tim and I are both like Tim's more from like the Midwest. I grew up in Colorado, but I spent all of my summers in Nebraska. And then I lived in South Dakota for 6 years after school. So like I would never call myself a Midwesterner, because they would kick my ass for like, weren't you born in Baltimore? But we do have sort of like that, like a feel for that, and that kind of place and that kind of people. And both of us have moved to big cities and then gone back, and there is sort of like a tension that comes from that, where they're just like mistrustful of whatever it is you're up to now. I went to a 7-Eleven. I drove home for Christmas to Colorado, where my folks live, a couple years ago. And I went to a 7-Eleven, and this guy was just walking out, and he was just like, "California?" He looked at my car, and I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, "Go on back." He just told me to go on back. I was just like, "Oh, okay." I didn't have anything to say. I was so shocked.
You're like, "I will be. I'm not staying. Don't worry. I'll only be here for a little bit. I will be going back."
I'm a soft Californian. I had no retort.
But yeah, it's that there's what I like to tell people also, like when people either read or watch The Walking Dead and they're not really into zombies in the walkers per se, it's more about the people and what they're doing in the world that includes zombies. So like it's the same thing. Those people who maybe don't like some superhero style stories, that this is a book that features superhero people, but it's not really about the actual superhero fighting world-ending things. It's about the character itself, and that's one of those weird things. It's like it could be hard to explain to people, but also I feel like you just pick up an issue and read it. It's only $3 or $4.
Well, it's one of the cool things about comic books, about doing it as a single issue comic book and as an image comic book and something that comes out on Wednesdays in comic stores, is that we can sort of write this story about the characters, and we can, like, the superheroics, it's thought through, and like we spend time on it, but we also know that everybody reading it that's picking it up off the shelf has like a base level of knowledge about like, this is what superheroes are like, this is what, and then outside of that, like, because superheroes have been like the popular culture for the past 20 years, everybody else too, like everybody sort of knows, like, it's like the Avengers, or if you're in a comic store, it's like Youngblood, or
And it has that, we're all living in a world of nostalgic, loving the nostalgic part of life, and thinking back. And I mean, one of the things you've been doing a lot of over the past couple of years is those like vintage or like the homage variant covers that for old school horror films, or some of them are new horror films, but just that nostalgic part of it is huge. And this is kind of cool. And it sounds like you guys wanted to do it because you do have this, love for the 1990s comic book, but it also has us who I don't want to read a 1990s comic book right now, but I'll read a book that has an homage to a 1990s comic book in it.
Right. Yeah. It's definitely nostalgic. Like, it comes from nostalgia, but it also, we're trying to sort of say something about nostalgia too, and sort of like, you can't go home again. That's sort of, so hopefully it comes through. I think I've been really heartened by how the reaction to it's been so far, and just like reading it, like reading people's reactions to the book, and just going like, oh, they get it, like it's been nice, because we've been working on it for a couple years now, just sort of like slowly putting it together, and so now it's nice to see that more people than just me and Tim get what this thing is.
And reading it, I mean, it's sold, both issues sold out, both issue 1 and issue 2 sold out at the distributor level to go into second print. So obviously people are buying it, and having issue 2 go into sellout is even more impressive, in my opinion, than issue 1 going to sellout.
Or
which means that people like this issue 1.
Or it's just a sign that the market is screwed up.
Yes, exactly. I was trying to be nice. I was trying to pat you on the back over there, but
I think comics is going to be fine. I'm not one of these like doomsday preppers. But I am always just sort of like looking around like, all right, what do we have to, how do I stay on top of this?
Let's print X amount of copies so it goes to sell out so that it looks better, or.
Right. Is that a 5 Goes West Laserdisc behind you?
Yes, it is. And it's signed by Philip Glasser, the guy who did the voice for
oh yeah. Was he at that show?
Yeah, he was, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Sure. And then there's Local Man.
I see that. I see Stray Dogs back there in a couple of spots.
Yeah,
very well appointed studio here. I love it.
There you go. All that stuff over there. Yeah, I had to put that up there. I mean, that Stray Dogs, that one lives there. Like, that's where it is. That moves for whoever's on the podcast.
And then this is that.
This right here, actually, this Stray Dogs is actually just in front of a Something's Killing the Children slab. So that's actually not slab, because you actually signed that one at the Comic-Con. But and same thing with that one up here. It's not actually slab. It's sitting in front of it.
I just love that it's there.
Talk about 90s nostalgia. That's season 1 of X-Men, the animated series, signed by Lauren Zahn, who did Rogue's voice.
Oh, that's cool.
She was at the next convention with you're actually, I think there's a picture of you and I on the wall somewhere up there. You're way up at the top. You can't see it. Like, this is like a 10-foot ceiling, and you can't see it. You're way up
more central location for the future. Yeah.
Just move it down here every time the person's on. Yeah.
Right.
No, it's just, I love the comic book personally. I read it again when we were going to talk earlier in the week. So I was like, oh, I'll read issue 1 again. And then when I went to read issue 2 last night, I was like, oh, I'll read it again. And so now I read it 3 or 4 times, or, the first issue 3 or 4 times. Read the second issue once last night, and it's great. I'm big fan of Tim's work as well. I stumbled upon Revival well after I should have. Me and my local
hype train.
Yeah, me and my local comic book shop were like, it was like hitting reprint or like going back on previews to like so he could order it again. And he's like, oh, what's this Revival thing? And he's like reading it, and he's like, how did I miss this thing? I mean, he only opened his shop 3 years ago. So yeah. But yeah, it was just kind of funny that it's like, oh my God, how did we miss this? And I'm a Scotty Young fan, and Scotty has a variant for issue 3, or did the cover for issue 13.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't even know how I missed that. And my buddy goes, he's a Scotty Young fan too. And he goes, I have that issue and I don't remember this comic book. I was like, oh, okay. But Tim's
Yeah,
doing great work too, and you guys partnering up to me. I wrote on my notes here. It's a dream team in my book. So,
oh, thank you. Yeah, I love Mike Norton too. So Revival was like that for me. I was
yes.
just like to see those guys doing something long form and sort of,
Mhm.
and again, like a Midwest story and then a horror story. I love that book, and it was like the design on it was beautiful. I think about that book a lot when we're putting this together because I want it to look also classy and also like thoughtful. We just don't have Jenny Frison, which she is like
Yes.
a secret weapon.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
She got too big for us. I
Got
bet
too
Tim
big for
could
you.
pull it off. He's like her brother-in-law, but we haven't approached that subject.
Oh, one of the other things I wanted in the comic book, my favorite was like the small things that I relate to, and one of them was when he's standing. I don't want to spoil too much, but he's standing in a bar and someone walks in and he's looking them up on Facebook.
Yeah,
It was like I've done that so many times, but I
yeah,
don't know. Like, okay, I know who that is. I want to look a person's name up, but I don't know anything about them anymore. Are they
right.
married? Do they have kids? Where do they work? And I'm like, quickly, okay, now I know
Yeah,
everything I need to know about this person. How's it going? Nice to see you.
for sure. Yeah, that was something we thought about because we were like, he's gonna see his ex-girlfriend,
Yeah,
and it's one of those things where like if you don't keep up with somebody, like how do you show the reader and how does our character like find out what she's up to very quickly? And then we're just like, well, I would just look her up on Facebook.
yes,
So then we thought like, well, let's just show that, and then figure out a way that's not like the boring way to show that. So
yeah,
we did like a fun montage thing.
yeah. The
Yeah,
montage on it, and it's not Facebook itself. It's slightly different than Facebook.
right. Yeah, I think it is Facebook. We just never show the logo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like the characters are like, oh, I feel like I've seen those characters from that group in a comic book, but it's not. They're just so close to what you would expect from a 1990s Image comic
Yeah.
book that it makes you think that Third Gen was an actual group
Well, and
in
then
the
the other,
90s.
like the thing that we've done to sort of try and cement that and make that connection in people's minds is on all our back covers and all our B covers, where we have like some of our favorite artists from back in those days doing our characters on those covers. So like Todd Knock did the
Yeah.
one on issue 2 that just came out. Brett Booth is on number 3 from Backlash. Like I talk about them in terms of like their their Wildstorm and their Extreme Studios books. Todd Knock drew New
Yeah.
Men, one of my favorite books. And then issue 4 is Bill Mouse from Nera X Cyber Angel, which is not an Image comic, but to me is like one of the quintessential 90s comics. And then issue 5 is Joe Benitez from like,
Mhm.
Weapon Zero and Cyber Force. And so having those guys draw our characters in a style like that. And then issue number 2, the second printing that just got announced today, that's by Carl Altstetter, who drew Bloodstrike. So it's just like seeing them drawn like that, where Tim's doing a pretty close
Mhm.
approximation, just having like the actual guys just go like, no, this is how we did it, and it's sort of like I feel like really sets it in a time and place. Not that they're like they're drawing in an older style to try and to approximate that thing.
Yeah,
So
but I mean, it's just a cool another level of fun you get to have is create. I mean, first of all, it's creator owned, so you guys can do mostly what you want,
yeah.
and that's pretty cool that you were able to do that and connect with those people to get that done. Because it's also cool. It's the ones where like they look like they're on long boxes, and it's like a comic
Mhm.
book set on the long box. It's just pretty cool because like you can easily do an homage cover to make it look like it's a comic book from that time, but to have
Yeah.
it be almost a photograph of a comic book laying on a stack like you would see at a comic book shop was pretty cool too.
Yeah, we did some homage covers with the first issue as like
Mhm.
retailer incentives. But we sort of made a choice, probably a stupid financial choice, to just do like stuff that feels like that but is not that, because we want it to feel like its own thing. Like we want
Mhm.
the book to feel like something, but for you not to just go into it going like, oh, this is going to be like Cyberforce or whatever.
Mhm.
Like, so hopefully that works. We'll see.
Well,
It's
it's like
all
the foil cover too of
yeah.
one was pretty dope too because it also reminded me of was it X-Men's Generation X had that too, the full
But,
foil as well,
oh
and
yeah,
other comic books like that too. But it's so cool.
yeah,
They're
that
such a cool
one.
looking.
That one, Marat Michaels
Yeah,
from Brigade,
yeah,
who that page of his was sort of the spark for this thing.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's so awesome. It's so much fun too because I feel like it's also that much different than Stray Dogs, which is what like again, we were on, we talked before we started recording. You were on here almost a year ago, or right around a year ago, but within a couple of days, talking Stray Dogs, and it's like that's the last thing that I was Tony Fleecs, like, oh, here's Stray Dogs, and this is like that much different than it too, which is pretty cool. It's another, that was its own animal, no pun intended. In that sense, this is so much, not so much different, but different in a sense that it makes it really exciting to see what else you could do.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we're working on a Stray Dogs follow-up thing too. So Trish and I and the Stray Dogs team are working on that. But this is something that I can sort of do, not in I don't have any free time, but sort of like on the side of the Stray Dogs follow-up. And I'm doing a work for hire thing that's a licensed comic with my buddy Justin Greenwood that'll be announced soonish. So yeah, I'm busy with all that stuff.
Is that writing, or are you
writing? Yeah,
because obviously Justin's a great artist too.
But.
Yeah. So the decision in the world we live in right now, we're like everything is a 5-issue miniseries or 4-issue miniseries. To have one like yours to be an ongoing or a planned ongoing or whatever else, however, more than 5 issues, you have multiple volumes you're thinking about and things like that. How far out do you have written or like plotted out right now? Do you have like within 10 issues plotted out, or is it like you have 5 issues plotted out?
Well, we have 5 issues fully written.
Okay.
And then we're thinking about doing a one shot in between arc 1 and 2. And then arc 2 is like, we know sort of where it's headed and like where Jack ends up and what he's doing, but we sort of have just sort of like sketches of ideas, and we have like, it's not like something that's written in concrete, which is sort of like, it's similar to the way they made these books back then, and it's sort of the way Tim makes comics, which is a little more like improvisational and running and gunning, whereas like I have pretty tight outlines for everything before I get started on things, generally up until now. And so I'm sort of learning how to operate in a world where you don't just have, like your whole life to sit around and plan something out. So we have a plan for it, but we don't have like, well, in issue 14, this is when this happens. And in issue 15, this is when this happens, which is what I like. That's what Stray Dogs was. That's what, like everything that I've done is pretty well like plotted out to the page. So this is a little looser, but we have a plan.
And was that there's just so much story to tell? Is that one of the reasons for an ongoing, or was it just that this seems like it fit that way? And also, back in the day, that's what happened. There wasn't very many miniseries.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's about building a story machine, right? Like it's like an engine that generates more story. Where we set up this main character and we start him out in like a dark place, and we start to try and give him a journey to go on. And then we also set up all these other things in this world, like his old superhero world and the small town world and the mystery, and sort of like all these things can sort of feed off each other, and you just don't resolve everything in the first 5. Like you tell a story in the first 5, you resolve it, it's a trade paperback, but then you still have all these other tendrils and things that are going on the outside. And so we sort of deal with those, and then we can throw new things in. And then also we like there's references to Image Comics stuff in the first arc, but we don't have like, like Shadowhawk's on a cover, but spoiler, Shadowhawk is not like, he doesn't show up in the pages that we have. So we are going to have stuff like that where these characters show up, not as, I mean, we never want it to be like, Crossjack and and Spawn in an adventure together. But we do like the idea of like, well, he lives in this world. Our idea is always that like when those events were happening, like when, like Image United or, like Extreme Destroyer or these sort of like 90s Image events would happen, Deathmate, Crossjack would just, and his team would be like off on the side fighting, just off panel where you don't see them. And so we like the idea of having, he knows these characters and they can pop up and go like, hey, you should know about this. We, like cameos and stuff like that, but hopefully not in ways where it just seems like cheap. I don't know. We're just excited to sort of like, we've now that there's a proof of concept and we can show these guys the books and just go like, could we use this character? And they go like, yeah, in at least 2 cases, they've gone like, yeah, go ahead. So we're going to have fun with stuff like that.
I'm just waiting for Al Simmons and Crossjack or to have a coffee together.
Oh
Spawn
man, the
Spawn and
dream.
Jack. Al Simmons and Jack just sitting at a coffee table at a Starbucks, or not Starbucks. It'd probably be some sort of mom and pop, coffee
Right.
shop, having a coffee together, just talking about war stories.
Yeah,
That's what
we
I'm waiting
missed
for.
that. They did that Spawn cover
Yeah.
month like 2 months before us, and we're so jealous. We're just like, oh, it'd be so perfect, you know.
I mean, it's
Maybe
not
we'll
saying
do
that
another
something
Spawn
couldn't
cover.
happen in the future with something. At some point, it wouldn't be a bad idea to have Todd do a cover for you, right?
I mean, I think that goes for any comic at all. Like,
Yes.
you don't just have to be doing a comic about '90s comics. Like,
There's
yeah,
this guy who at my local comic book shop, who just recently actually had to stop collecting comics. Long story, won't get into it. But he was a big Todd McFarlane fan, like not just like Spawn fan or anything like that. Like anything Todd McFarlane drew, he was very excited to have a copy of it. And he was trying to do I don't know what his plan was, but he was buying like 5 copies of every Spawn cover.
wow.
It was crazy. It was some sort of, I
I
don't know.
might suggest that he doesn't have to stop buying comics. He could just pare down to one.
Yes, but like so, and that was the Todd McFarlane part of it was this like connection to having all these things, and so at that time it was like not only was Image doing these like covers for all of their series for the anniversary of Spawn,
See,
but also it was the same time that Batman Spawn was coming out over at DC, and so they were doing Spawn on all kinds of DC covers too. So he was getting all of these covers that included Spawn on it. I was like ridiculous, but I did find, which I don't know where it is now, a Flaming carrot comic book that Todd did that included the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles on the front of it. From what I've
yeah.
known, it's the only time that he's ever drawn the TMNT like turtles on the cover. But it was a Flaming Carrot comic book by Todd McFarlane cover featuring the turtles.
He
And I was
did a
like,
pinup. He did a Turtles pinup too
okay.
that I
But
know
like,
about.
I was like, I need to have this. This is like the most obscure comic book I think I own right now. Just like,
Yeah, I like
I
a
need to
flaming
have this
carrot.
right now. Flaming Carrot, Todd McFarlane Turtles cover. Yeah, I need this right now in my
There's
life.
a Archie Sonic comic that like the Image superheroes cross over into as well. That's worth tracking down. They're, like I just like the idea that our characters live in the same world as Sonic the
It's hard.
Hedgehog. Also,
Yes, yeah,
You never know who might show up.
exactly. But so Local Man's been like the majority. I mean, obviously a big project of yours. You've been promoting it because it's a big series. You guys are working hard on it and stuff like that too. But you've also been still keeping your variant covers going. You were art director for Dark Ride's
Yeah.
variant homage covers. What was that like?
So that was Josh Williamson is a
Yeah.
buddy of mine, and he really liked the covers we did for Stray Dogs, and he reached out to me and he was like, "Can you do those for us, but do the reverse, where it's instead of doing cartoons on horror covers, do cartoon covers that are horror
Mm-hmm.
covers, basically." So I was like, "Yeah, I would love to." But my schedule is tight, and when we did so many horror covers for Stray Dogs when it came to like retailer incentives and stuff
Yeah.
that towards the end it was like just sort of like reaching out and tapping people and going like this person would be good or this person would be good, or stores would reach out and say like, can we use this artist? So I had sort of done like I did the logos on almost every one of the hundreds of Stray Dogs variant covers, and the design and just making sure like like art directing basically.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said like, what if I did that? Like I've worked in like children's comics and licensed comics for years, so I have a network of people that are like great for this. And so let me reach out to some of my favorite people and go like, like here's a chance to do a cool cover for Skybound, and you
Mm-hmm.
don't have to try and you can just draw it like you would draw it.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to bring in my friends like Andy Price and Trish Forstner from Stray Dogs, and Amy Meberson from Ponies is about to do one. Agnes Garboska did one. So it's just sort of like when I was working on My Little Pony, and like all my friends were pony friends. Well, I mean, like I had other friends, but like all my pony friends, there was sort of like it wasn't like a chip on our shoulder, but we did feel sort of like the outside world of comics sort of had us in a box.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was fun for me to be in a position to go like, all right, well here's a job for Skybound, or hopefully there will be more of that in the future where I can go like, here's a job for whatever. This is a place where other people can see you be a badass like I've seen you be a badass just on My Little Pony comics.
they're unbelievable too. I saw the first ones, it caught me by surprise. I was like, oh my god. And then they continue on, and the book itself is amazing. Dark Ride is wonderful. The artwork
Yeah, I like that
already
book
is
a lot.
great, and seeing that is pretty cool. And I'm hoping, I work in the beer industry, as you probably know, in my day job, and that is I design beer labels, and it's one of the biggest things in our industry is the homage to different things,
Oh yeah.
pop culture wise in general. There's this borderline whether or not it's intellectual property steal. There's this whole like discussion about it in the beer industry, but it's one of those cool things nowadays. I just saw, what did I just see? Oh, The Curse of Cleaver County is a book by Source Point, I believe it is,
Uh-huh.
that's doing a House of a Thousand Corpses variant cover on it, which was pretty cool. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then there's also
Yeah.
one that was Friday the 13th, kind of like the one you did for Stray Dogs, or the cover for Stray Dogs, I should say. And so like those are cool. And I was like, I don't think I was going to buy that comic book in the first place, but now I feel like I want that because I feel like I like that the homage to it.
Yeah.
But I feel like the right covers for the right book works, and having someone like yourself art directing it and making sure that it's done right, and pulling in the artist is worth it, instead of just saying, hey, stores, do what you want kind of thing, which is
Yeah. Well, so for Dark Ride, it makes sense, and for Stray Dog, it made sense. Like it's just like DC when they do like Deceased, I feel like that makes sense.
Mhm.
Where it's a zombie thing.
Yep.
Marvel did like they did homages to Marvel covers when they did Marvel Zombies, but like it's just a thing where you're taking a familiar thing and you're flipping it so that it makes people look at your thing and go like, what's this about? And that obviously worked super well for us on Stray Dogs, and it was. But I also think like like my buddies will always be like, well, it was all them that variant covers that did it for you, and I was like, well, yeah, but we also wrote like a like there's a story there too, which
Yes,
is
exactly.
sort of what we're trying to do with Local Man, and what we did with Stray Dogs is just like, bring people in when they see something that looks bizarre. Like when you see a cover and it's like a long box and Shadowhawk's there, and and a character you've never seen before, and you're just like, what is this? And then hopefully when you flip it open, you're like, oh, this is completely unexpected. So hopefully that's what we're doing.
Yeah, it's a way to sell more comics, obviously, but I do think that it's still people out there. I mean, I was one of the people out there buying the cover A and the homage cover of what I wanted specifically. I don't have all of them, obviously. There's specific ones that meant something to me, or meant,
Yeah.
that same thing with Dark Ride. And the benefit also is, I think, is a Dark Ride all 1 in 25s.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the other thing, is like it's not like just regularly accessible. I don't think my LCS in the area bought 25 copies of Dark Ride just because he's just a small shop.
Yeah,
And
you
so
get
it's
to
like
like
we didn't even
issue
have
6
it.
on
So yeah.
something. Yeah.
So
Yeah, the variants for Stray Dogs came from a discussion with Image where I wasn't sure about them, and they told us, I probably talked about this when we talked Stray Dogs, but basically they said, like, if you do horror movies with these cartoon dogs, you're telling the audience without having to say a word that this is a horror thing that's about cartoon dogs, And so it's sort of like, and the same thing with Dark Ride, where you're telling the audience like, this is like a Disney thing, but has a creepy, like, satanic horror underbelly, which I think comes across in those covers. It's sort of like, it's one of these like I hate to bring Scott McCloud's holy name into like the discussion of variant covers, but it is one of those Scott McCloud things where you're telling the reader something with artwork, and not with just like, you're not relying on the retailer to know what your book is about or anything like that. You're just doing your best to get the message out on what your book is.
And I think that's I jokingly said to one of the customers at the local comic book shop 2 weeks ago, was like, he saw some cover or something and he was like, I don't want this. I go, you're judging a book by its cover? And he looks at me, he goes, we're at a comic book shop. Isn't that what we all do? I go, that's a good point. Fair enough. So it's true. And so having a cover that relates, and that's why there's some people out there who would complain about that variant. Like they're doing a bunch of Super Mario homage variants that have come out over the past year or so, of like, it's like that has nothing to do with the physical story in the book. Like there's no cartoon plumber in the book. There's no, what I mean? Like there's so at least with the horror comic book, horror movie variants for Stray Dogs and the Dark Ride ones, it's a relation to what's happening in the book itself. Not directly, but there's still that explanation to it. Whereas some of these homage covers are just like I just wanted to do an homage cover that looked cool, like a
Right.
Wheaties
Well, I
box that had
mean,
nothing to do with Wheaties in it.
yeah, there's money in it. So it's
Oh
sort of
yeah,
like on the, and that's a lot of times that's retailers too, where their job is just to sell the books.
yeah.
Their job is not to make the books. So on that side, I can see that too. But yeah, I try to do them where if we're doing that, because I have a very healthy self-loathing where like I see myself as a fraud before anyone else would. So like if I'm going to do something that could be in any way considered fraudulent, I want to be out ahead of it and just be like, okay, this makes sense. Like I really did have to have homage variant covers explained to me in a way where it was like, okay, this makes sense for me as an artist
Yeah,
to enough of an extent where I can do this and feel comfortable, So
yeah, exactly. And I appreciate your cover A for, excuse me, for Local Man is like it's basically explaining what's in the book, that it's about a superhero, but not really. It's the more personal side of it, and that's like there wasn't the Crossjack wasn't the cover, like the main cover
yeah,
of it either. It's Crossjack, which is kind of funny. He doesn't actually wear that hood until no spoilers or anything. He doesn't actually wear that outfit until issue 2,
yeah,
right?
yeah. He
So
had that hood on in a lot of like our pitch stuff when we were
yeah,
early working on it, and so that sort of became like the icon of
yeah.
Crossjack in modern times when we would think about him. But and it looks cool, so we put it on the cover.
Yeah. I mean, it looks awesome. I love that little dog there too, and it just looks like small town, local man, local town, USA on that cover too, and the colors are great too. I love the colors. That
Oh,
pink and
thank you.
yellow is beautiful as well. But so speaking of variant covers, though, you've also done gargoyles now recently, which is pretty
Mm-hmm.
cool.
Yeah,
That
me
was
and
pretty.
Trish.
I mean, are you a fan of gargoyles growing up? Like, I was a fan of gargoyles, so I just didn't know
Yeah,
if it was something you watched.
I like that show when it was on. Trish is more of like a super fan of it,
Mhm.
and so she keeps me on track. Like I'm in charge on those of just sort of like, you know, composition and like the finish. Like we do them together. We're sort of passing them back the whole time, but Trish is in charge of like being a huge fan of gargoyles and going like, well, this person would never do that. Like
Mhm.
she's very excited about those. And then she's also doing Darkwing Duck and
Mhm.
Scar, Lion King covers. So she's just in her full Disney bag, just having a great time. Me, like I loved all that stuff, but my memory for it, like I feel like
Yeah.
all the memory space that was allocated for remembering Disney afternoon TV shows is all in, Gen 13 and
Yes.
Youngblood comics and stuff.
I did appreciate the fact that I forget his name now. The person who wrote the actual TV show was the one writing the comic book too. I thought
Yeah, Greg
that's a cool,
Weisman.
it's just a cool like carryover into that as well. But obviously, if I'm looking at the one that I first saw you and Trish did, it's like it obviously featured dogs.
Yeah.
I was like, so 8 Billion Genies also has a number 8 variant coming out that's a homage to Stray Dogs,
Yeah.
number 1. Uh, question to you though, a really quick question: when you created Stray Dogs, the first time you're like, okay, this is going out, we're gonna sell it. Did you ever think that you would be homaging your own cover for someone else's comic book?
I mean, anything with Stray Dogs is the answer is I never thought any of it. Like I definitely thought that would be a cover that would come out. I would have a stack of them somewhere, and then other people, I would have to remind people that it came out. So
Yeah,
the idea that somebody's like, we could sell this if we put the Stray Dogs number 1, you know, the like
cover
that
with the
does.
little genie coming out of the side of it. It's just like,
I love it though because that's a very easy cover to draw. So I had to do that 8 billion genies like in a week where I was doing a ton of other stuff, and that did not hurt at all to do. It was just like like I've already got the door drawn. Let's go.
it's it was Bird City comic books, that who it was that did the book itself was like 500 something copies or something, like 250 copies, something like that. But it was kind of funny. I was just like looking at it, I was like, oh my gosh, it's so funny that Stray Dogs just took off. It's a well written book, and obviously Trish did a great job on the art too. But like it was just kind of funny to see
Yeah.
that homage of a cover on it. Like I was like, oh. and
Well,
8 Billion Genies is wonderful too. So I won't,
yeah, that's Ryan. Ryan Brown's a buddy of mine too, and
Mhm.
he's very close with Tim. And so
Okay.
I was excited to get to do something for one of his books. But we also did a Stray Dogs for that Whatnot book, Ninja Funk, as well.
Oh yeah.
Like they like the um like the publisher of Whatnot's a buddy of mine from like conventions way back. And they reached out, and this retailer reached out that I also know from conventions. So it's just like, I feel like it does feel crazy that there's Stray Dogs. I mean, there's a lot of Stray Dogs variants, but like Stray Dogs homage variants out there.
Yeah.
The shoe being on the other foot, it does feel pretty crazy. But so far, I've done them, so
Yes.
I'll feel even weirder if somebody else, like if I see somebody else doing one, it just feel, fair enough. Game recognized game.
And then you also obviously just let you know that you've been doing plush ones as well too, which has been pretty cool. That's a very very odd series. It's very well done, but it's very odd in my opinion. And I love those covers too. It's funny too because I'm a big fan of your artwork, not just a podcaster here. I'm a big fan of your artwork, and so when I get to the LCS and I'm like doing my pull list or whatever, and I'm like, God damn it, Tony has another cover. You're making me go poor here, buddy.
I'm sorry. I just signed up for another series for 8 issues, so that's gonna be a bummer. And then the work for hire thing that I'm doing, that I'm writing, I'm gonna do covers for that too. And Trish and I are doing Gargoyles covers for another. We have 4 more to draw.
Okay.
And so I think we're going up through issue 12.
Nice. That's a great thing for Dynamite right there, is having the Gargoyles, the Darkwing Duck, the Disney villains for them. It's been crazy to see. It's funny. I laugh at the fact that it could be. I would imagine it's pretty successful, and then Disney's over there going, "Why did we give that to sell it to Dynamite?"
It is one of those things where like it takes an outside eye sometimes to look at your stuff and go like, "This is the stuff people like," and also Disney's in the business of doing, like family stuff and princess stuff and like theme park stuff. And so if you're from comics and you're looking at it and you go like, well, how come there's not a Gargoyles comic? Like how come there's not a wing of Disney that's just in charge of badass stuff? And so I feel like that you almost need a licenser to do that, and that they're working with Greg Weisman, and that they have like the artists that they have on it sort of capture the spirit of the thing. Like I think it's a good fit.
It is, but it's just kind of funny. They have Planet of the Apes is coming out next week. They did Planet of the Apes #1 at Marvel, and they've been doing Alien and Predator recently. And it's just kind of funny those are on the Marvel under the Marvel banner, but Darkwing Duck and Gargoyles ended up over at Dynamite was just kind of a interesting thing. But I was excited. I honestly don't think I've ever owned a Dynamite comic book until I bought Gargoyles #1. So that was a nice little thing there. Now I'm excited for a Scar. Very excited for Scar. It's just kind of a funny thing. My friend was like, "Really? Seriously?" I'm like, "No, I'm excited to see Scar comic book. Are you kidding me? This is amazing."
Yeah. What's that guy's journey? Love to know.
So you're doing Stray Dogs, working on some more stuff with Stray Dogs. Obviously, it's not going to go away. We're getting something else. Obviously, you can't tell everything, but like, there's so many more in the world of Stray Dogs.
It's in the world of Stray Dogs for sure. I mean, it's a Stray Dogs like book. It's not Stray Dogs, but it's the team, and it's horror, and it's animals, and then that hopefully will be what we're talking about when we talk 1 year from today.
Yes, 1 year from today. Anything else? So you obviously have you said you had that other IP project you're working on too, like that. Are you going to any cons this year, or did you take some? Like, you only do a few, right?
I'm going to be doing more because life is expensive, and so I have to find a way to I was doing great, and then I was like, I should buy a house, and then so I bought a house, and then now I'm not doing great again, so I have to really hustle to keep to keep this new station. But yeah, I'm doing one. Well, I have a signing this weekend. I don't know when this goes up, but Saturday I'll be
Monday, so it'll be already done. But yeah, so it was fun, right? People showed up.
We loved it. The line was huge. And then that next week, I have a My Little Pony show in San Francisco, and then the week after that, I have a signing in like down by San Diego at Nowhere Comics, and then the week after that, I'm in Nebraska for a Comic-Con in Grand Island, Nebraska, which will be probably maybe a little smaller than the Bangor show, and then the weekend after that, I'll be in Las Vegas at amazing Las Vegas Comic-Con. So I've got stuff lined up. I got to get some more lined up, and some bigger ones. We'll definitely be at San Diego. So yeah, just getting everything lined up, and then trying to still manage to make comic books while I'm running around doing all this other. The business of making comic books is not always conducive to the art of making comic books at the same time. So it's challenging to figure out, but I'm handling it. I'm figuring it out.
It's fine. It works. And so I'm excited for people to pick up a Local Man. So second printing. So this is going to come out on Monday. I think it's April 3rd. So second printing will be of issue 1 Wednesday. Will be in your shop on that Wednesday. So grab that. And if you haven't, you should be able to pre-order now issues 2, the second printing of that right now, because it was just announced. So go to your LCS, call them, email them, whatever, and get that ordered and make that one sell out at the distribution level.
2 and 3 will FOC on Monday when this comes out. So if you hear this first thing, call your shop immediately and go like, that guy sounded all right. Let me try out Local Man issues 2 and 3.
And tell them you want all of the rest of them too, because it's ongoing. So just say, hey, whenever one comes up for sale, I want to buy one and put it in your box. Because yes, exactly. Because it's worth it. And then if you Stray Dogs is available on trade, so grab that too. And I have the trade somewhere around here. 2
volumes, Stray Dogs and Stray Dogs Dog Days.
Yes.
And then I got more stuff coming out soon, and then we'll have all kinds of stuff. I have a comic filled year. I'm very busy doing all this stuff, but Local Man's the thing that's out now, and I'm excited about it because for a while I was just working on stuff quietly in secret and and nothing was out. So at least now people are like, oh yeah, we like that guy.
You're the Local Man.
Yeah, I'm a Local Man made good in the big city.
And so the funny thing is, actually, I just saw that in the previews thing that I was looking at yesterday was that the TMNT Last Ronin is doing like a covers hardcover. So they're putting all the covers in one thing. That not that I'm here to give you ideas, but that would be kind of a cool thing for Stray Dogs too, is to have like some sort of trade paperback that's just all the covers.
I have this dream where when we do the hardcover for Stray Dogs, somewhere down the line, it'll be a slipcase, sort of like the Batman Year One Absolute Edition, where there's like the story, and then there's one that's just like 150 pages of covers, which is I think how many there are. So we went nuts on that book. Good Lord.
I can't wait to see it on the screen too, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, but Tony, I really appreciate it. Tim, I hope Tim sells a bunch of comics and stuff this weekend at C2E2. I really hope that he ends up busy and and can recover from this week. And then I hope nothing but the best for you. And again, we'll talk in a year, right?
Yeah, thanks, man. Put it on your calendar. I'll be back.
Back on in a year. But until then, I really appreciate you coming on, having a conversation with us. Follow Tony on social media, Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff, as well as, is it just TonyFleecs.com?
TonyFleecs.com. You can buy original art. I'm about to have one of the other many things I have to do is me and my buddy Christian Misi did this book Time Shopper, which was a Kickstarter, but we have copies of that. So I'm going to put that up on TonyFleecs.com too. And so that'll be available there. Yeah. Follow me on social media.
Yes.
Tony Fleecs everywhere you go.
And so you can see more pictures of Local Man. And I'm sure there'll be a post about issue 2 going to FOC here pretty soon too, because I feel like the last thing you posted was about issue 1 going to FOC.
That does tend to become my life on social media. I have since the world got very crazy.
Yes.
All my real bitching happens in group threads and stuff like that. And so the stuff that the rest of the world sees is just like, here's new artwork I have, or here, please order this, or, so I feel like I'm not upholding my end of the bargain, Twitter wise, by not getting out there and making noise like that. But yeah, so you just hear from me when I have artwork. And
Twitter's such a cesspool right now anyway. The more you can just retweet other people's stuff, it's fine with me. It's fine.
Yeah. I'll be on main for just a minute and I'm just like, the world sucks. Where's my, let me go talk shit about other people in quiet with my friend.
Group. Yeah, exactly. Privately when no one can hear about it. Yeah. But yeah, I appreciate it. And again, if you're at a con or see a signing, whatever, go see Tony and check out his website, because there's a bunch of cool original art on there. It's affordable. I will say it's pretty affordable for a great talented artist as yourself. It is.
If you want Stray Dogs artwork, that's on Felix Comic Art. That is not affordable.
No.
If you're a Stray Dogs fan, you should go there and get some of that too.
So I really appreciate it, Tony, again, and enjoy the rest of your day. Get some work done, okay?
Thanks, Justin. We'll talk to you soon.